Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Tuesday, February 4th, 3 p.m. Last I checked, there were no coaching moves that have happened here since the last time we talked. So that's good news. I closed out Twitter. So you'll have to be my eyes and ears while we spend the next 60 to 90 minutes together talking a little bit about your favorite team, the defending national championship Buckeyes. Been a pretty wild ride since hoisting the golden leg lamp over at Mercedes-Benz. I had to think about the name of the stadium with all of the sponsorships and everything else, but it's never been like it's had a name. It's not like it was, the Georgia Dome in prior. And then it went through many iterations of its name. I really hate using the advertiser name if I can avoid it, unless the advertiser is paying me. But outside of that, a lot has gone on. Let's go through and do some hellos to kind of get us into things. First, let me drop the scroll in here. So, all right, there we go. We are up and running and functional. Just dropped a piece over at Buckeye Huddle 20 minutes ago or so. For those of you who are members there or familiar with our Hot 11, we did a situation of where I went through all of the Hot 11s this year, looked for trends, looked at some numbers. I'm calling it a behind the numbers piece, but I don't really throw a lot of numbers in there. I just had a real branding issue with it today. I didn't know what exactly to call it. I mean, that's the trick. You got to sit there and you write something and you're happy with it. But if people don't read it, does it really matter? So I had to come up with a name that was catchy. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Florida Buckeye, happy national championship year. Go Buckeyes. OH. We'll jump ahead here to an IO from Robert Howard. I have applications in for all three positions, so we should be in pretty good hands regardless. You're welcome. Obviously talking about OC, DC, and O-line coach. Now, everything doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be that neat and compartmentalized or whatever. I mean, especially if they hire from within and move things around. We just don't know. But I think it's a good thing that Robert was able to get multiple applications in for that. I mean, obviously, travel's a bit of a bear. The hours are going to be horrible. But there is some cool jewelry at the end if you do well. So, that's good there. Lisa Sims, who I see in a lot of the chats, good afternoon, Buckeyes 2024 national champs. Then asks, can we ask questions? I highly encourage questions. And as I put in the chat prior to the start of the show, the more you ask, the less I have to have prepared. I always have this nightmare scenario that I'm gonna show up. I didn't promote the show well. And I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to sit there and fill 30 minutes and then be done at 30 minutes. And that's just going to look silly because I normally go, as I said, about 90 minutes, maybe 75. It just really depends on my voice. It depends on the questions. I mean, sometimes we just get to a point where I've answered all the questions more or less. And while I don't mind talking about whatever, grilling meats or bourbon or whatever, I mean, this is your show. I mean, if you want to talk about those things, we'll talk about those things. There's some things that I probably am out of my depth. I could not talk to you about knitting. I don't know a damn thing about knitting. I don't know a damn thing about masonry work. I mean, there are a lot of things that I could come up and say, I don't know anything about it. But, outside of that, we're going to talk about what you want to talk about. So, Lisa, feel free to fire off questions as needed. One of the downsides of the show, and I say that not being completely serious, is if I find a topic that I want to talk about, and I talk about it for 10 minutes, and then I fall 30 minutes behind on the chat, then we lose relevancy. I'll ask a question, and 20 minutes later, we'll get to some of the answers. I'll be like, what was that for again? But we'll do our best. We put on good web TV when we try. Glasswing Butterfly, undisputed national champs for the first 12-team playoff season ever. Go Bucks. There you go. Mozart's Ghost, who I just saw had signed up, or him or his doppelganger signed up for Buckeye Huddle. Thank you for that. We really appreciate it. And I want to remind everybody else as well who may not be a member of Buckeye Huddle, sign up for Buckeye Huddle. we're coming to the very end of our $4.99 for your first month promotion. Just did a show with Mark this week. He's like, yeah, it's coming to an end here soon. So if you are, if you're curious about seeing what the Huddle community is like, getting all the insight there, I highly recommend getting on board. We still have some national confetti or national championship confetti left, all handpicked by Tom, Tony, and myself. There's no filler. We have not gone in and gotten like Walmart confetti to throw in there to be able to lengthen our supply. This is 100% pure, uncut confetti from the field of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Keepsake for you, for your kids, whatever. I know people who have put it in with like a framed picture of the championship, or they've made like a shadow box, things like that. I mean, it's the least we can do. It's the least we can do, but it's something that is exclusive to our members, new and old. I think a lot of our old members have already gotten on board with it. So $4.99 first month, do that. Let's just keep going here. All right, Glasswing Butterfly. Can you give us your way too early off-the-cuff percentage chance we'll repeat the Natty this season? Why don't you ask me for the lottery numbers while you're at it, Glasswing? I mean, hell if I know. Ohio State has an interesting schedule, obviously starting with Texas, but that's a home game. Their big road game this year in terms of travel distance is out to Washington. I don't think Washington has necessarily found the secret sauce yet. I think that was more of a, hey, we're a senior-led team that has a lot of dudes, and Michael Penix has finally cashed in for us. I don't know if Washington is going to be a perennial contender. Obviously the game at the end of the regular season is going to be meaningful, but without knowing the quarterback situation. I mean, we assume it's going to be Julian Sayin without knowing who the coordinators are. And I think the problem too is that if I'm really giving an honest percentage, I think everybody's hoping I'm going to say like 60%. I can't say that. I mean, it's like, if I say them, well, they got a 1 in 10 chance of maybe repeating, that's 10%. People are going to hear 10%. Oh my God, that's terrible. What the hell? This guy's not a believer. No, it's just a lot of factors out there. There are 134 teams out there vying for the national championship. Granted, we know honestly there's less than 12 nationally that really have a snowball's chance in hell. I mean, sometimes a team will come out of left field, but the playoff showed us last year, I don't think all 12 teams in the playoff field really were true contenders for the Natty. I think that, some teams just checked off boxes and you won the ACC, so you're in the field, Clemson. And to Clemson's credit, and you should sit there and mark that, because I'm not going to give Clemson a lot of credit ever. They played Texas pretty well when they came back. They spotted the horns, too big of a lead, and Texas gave Ohio State its toughest game, in my opinion. Yes, Notre Dame came roaring back in that game, but I really think that the Texas game was by far, in terms of talent v. talent and how the game plans worked and everything else. I mean, they took Jeremiah Smith out of the mix largely. Ohio State scores on a 75-yard screen pass to Trevion Henderson at the end of the half. I mean, that was huge. Ohio State's drive to go up 21-14 was a lengthy drive that ate up a lot of clock, which was fine, but it was not how Ohio State normally scores. And then, oh, by the way, you get, one of the greatest memories in Buckeye history with the Jack Sawyer strip sack and scoop and score. So if I sit there and I say 6%, are people going to be appalled? Are people going to be aghast? Are people going to turn off the show because, I'm not coming in and saying 30% or 40%, but, if you're asking me to give a number when, A, there's so much that we don't know, and B, there's just so much uncertainty that happens in the season. I mean, I think if we go back 12 months and we look at what Ohio State, roster is supposed to be, I think it was a lot easier to give a bigger number at that point, because you have so many known quantities. You know what the D line looks like. Maybe you're not exactly sure, that Cody Simon's going to come on the way that he did. It's going to be a really good secondary. You have high hopes for running backs. Obviously, a healthier Trey and bringing in Quinshawn. I don't think anybody really, Mark and I knew what they were getting with Jeremiah Smith, and those who watched the show, I think, were at least told. I don't know if everybody was, able to buy in at that point. I think it was a lot easier to give a higher number, but I don't want to be labeled a homer. That's not good for your reputation doing this job. And I know that I've shifted a little bit more. I do write about the team, but I may be a little bit more of an opinion writer now, so I can be a little bit freer with some of the things that I say, but I have to be able to shift back into being just a beat writer at times too. So I can't be labeled, truly a homer. That's just a killer. You don't want to have that. While I know there are people I only really want news from a homer. I only really want news from somebody who's going to tell me what I want to hear. Then what happens when the news goes the other way? That son of a bitch, he lied to me. So I don't know, 6%. And I don't feel really good about that number. I don't know. I'm spitting in the wind here. 6%. And I feel like that's high. Now, talk to me in a month. Talk to me in 3 months. We don't have to get to the start of the season, but after spring ball, after seeing what the coaching staff is going to look like, what's going to happen there, maybe I'll feel a little bit better, especially after seeing what other teams look like in the spring. And no, I'm not going to go to the team up north or to Penn State or somewhere and go watch a spring practice. First of all, I'm not invited. Second of all, that just sounds like a lot of schlepping around for something that's not necessarily going to move the subscription needle. But, you can still kind of follow what the beat writers on each of the beats are saying about the teams and just get an idea, because I don't know who I really need to look at this year nationally and say, all right, these are the 6 teams nationally that are going to make up, 40% of the pie or something like that. But until we know that, you can only give everybody just a small taste. Georgia moving on to another quarterback after Carson Beck travels to Miami or transfers to Miami. Does Alabama turn things around? Texas is a sexy pick for a lot of people right now. I think it was Andy Staples from On3 had like Texas Notre Dame in the national champion. No, Texas Penn State, I think it was. There are people who are buying into Penn State because Penn State returns so much. I need to introduce them to Big Game James, but we'll see. So I don't know. I probably took this a hell of a lot more seriously than you wanted me to, but why so serious? Doug Shepard is driving, so be safe. Jordan Kapler says this is just the worst. This is not the year to pick on me. This is the year you're supposed to be picking on Tony. And God willing, if I make it to 2026, then I'll take the sandwich for a year of dealing with that. But this is not picking on Noon year. Remember, by your own rules, it was one guy a year, and I'm still a year out from my turn. All right. Lisa Sims. So if you could trade players like you can in the NFL and Georgia came to us and was interested in a trade for J.J. Smith, do you think we would be interested in any current Georgia players on their team? They're a very talented team, but you do not trade an alien like Jeremiah Smith. No, because here's the thing too. Ohio State's still going to have to figure out how to be within the 85, 105, have the players to be able to keep everybody happy and everything else. I know that JJ, if he had a was able to like veto trades, he would be like, team that doesn't necessarily have a quarterback. No, thank you. But what are you doing there? Obviously Ohio State is on all three levels of the defense, maybe not so much linebacker, but all 3 levels of the defense is severely depleted. So yeah, I think that there's some defensive ends that you'd be excited about. That would be a big middle finger to Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, and guys like that. there's something about roster construction, but I know we're speaking in a real hypothetical world. So I'm not going to try and drag this down into the real world too much, because that goes against the spirit of your question. But Georgia can't run the ball. Georgia doesn't necessarily have a depth at receiver right now. I don't know what their recruiting class is, but I'm going to assume they probably signed a couple of good receivers, but that's not been an issue for Ohio State. I don't think that the quarterback room is necessarily any better at Georgia than it is at Ohio State. I mean, I think we're going to have to see Ohio State go to the portal to get a depth guy. We still need to see what Lincoln Kienholz's decision is in the spring portal. Obviously, the portal's closed right now, but it does open again. How many quarterbacks is Ohio State going to have? You look at the secondary. I think Ohio State, you've got Jalen McClain, you've got Jermaine Matthews, you've got Malik Hartford. I mean, obviously, you have IGB coming back. You've got true freshmen coming in with like Devin Sanchez, Fahim Delane, and others. I hate it when I sit there and I go through a list and I don't name everybody, because it's like, oh, why did you forget this guy? Because I forgot him. But I don't think that they have. I mean, you're not asking, like a 1-for-1 trade. There's absolutely not another player in the nation that I'm doing a 1-for-1 trade or a 2-for-1 trade. I mean, obviously, in terms of everybody wanted to try and, I'm moving away from Georgia to Alabama, try and lump JJ and Ryan Williams together. Well, Ryan Williams is a tremendous player. He is a tremendous player. I do not ever want anybody to think that I feel otherwise. But he does not have the body type. He is not just the Julio Jones type of body type of Jeremiah Smith. So, yeah, it would be great if you would sit there and be like, oh, well, they could get 4 pass rushers and, a stud corner and, maybe another linebacker, because we don't know if they're necessarily going to be 4-2-5 next year, 3-3-5. Without a DC, you don't necessarily know. They have some talented tight ends, but Ohio State just went out and got Max Clare from Purdue. So I don't know if you necessarily are like, oh my God, you got to go after like an Oscar Delp type or something like that. So again, it's not a case of me saying that Georgia doesn't have anybody. That is the furthest thing from the truth. There's just not a compensation package there to where I could see something and be like, well, that almost makes sense. I mean, it's a really good question. It's a really good hypothetical, but my answer is no. I mean, and I answered no in 1 second, and I'm going to, after talking about it for 5 minutes, I'm going to stick with my answer of no. From Lori, why do some say 2024 and some say 2025 champs? There's some confusion on that, and let me explain it. It is the 2024 season, but obviously all the patches on the jerseys and everything else had 2025. The championship game happens in 2025, but it is for the 2024 season. When they started it in 2014, when Ohio State won it as well, and they were wearing 2015 patches, I'm like, oh, that's going to be a problem. And it still is. And I don't know. I don't know that, but that's what the situation is. And that's why there's the confusion on there, Lori. Not a bad question by any stretch of the imagination. The jerseys had 2025 on the, for all of that, the signage at the stadium had 2025, but it is the 2024 national champion, because you are the champions of the 2024 season. The entirety of the regular season took place in 2024. So hopefully that clears it up. No longer the man. What do you think will happen to Michigan? God, I could do a whole show on that one, or I could do like 5 seconds. The short answer is, I just don't know. I just don't know. I know what I would do. Well, Kevin, obviously you're biased, obviously. But I am a big proponent of sanctity of the game, things like that. a lot of people will say that some of my ideas and other, in like the pro sports are very get off my lawn, turn down that music, you long-haired hippie type of stuff, yelling at clouds. But if you do not, and this kind of echoes what Ryan Day said in his interview with Joel Klatt, and if you haven't seen that from Fox Sports, 40 minutes, really good stuff, really good stuff. We have not had another chance to talk to Ryan yet. We will not get to talk to Ryan this week. We will see what happens potentially next week. But if you, being the college football world, allow someone, meaning someone, maybe not necessarily circling in on Michigan, you got to be careful who it is you're talking about, but you allow somebody to get away with stuff with no penalties or very minimal penalties or such stupid penalties that there's no deterrent, then there's no deterrent. Then young coaches, again, I'm kind of echoing Ryan here, are like, well, why do I necessarily need to follow the rules or follow the rules? If I'm not going to get hammered for doing this, and it's so competitive, and their coaches out there only getting 1 year. It used to be you got 3 years. And if you couldn't get it done in 3, then you had to have a real serious conversation, and we might still give you 2 more years because we want you to be able to bring your own kids in. Hell, you could be gone in a year now. You could be gone in 8 weeks of the regular season, which it means you're still going to have months there. But if you have to have penalties with teeth, Michigan is going to say, well, we're going to take you to court. That's fine. Everybody signed the same deal to be part of the NC2A. The moose out front should have told you. This is how stuff works. Yes, I've seen the posts from Michigan fans, some Michigan fans. I don't hold on a second. Damn cat. Oh, well, we should just leave the NC2A and start our own thing and people will follow us. Well, good luck with that. Good luck with that. I mean, as much as people despise the NC2A for this or that, I mean, it is an organization that largely does good work. Eligibility Center does good work. I mean, there are a lot of men and women within the NC2A that come to work with the right frame of mind, with the best intentions in mind. And it's really easy to sit there and just to lump them all in together. And that's not fair. Yes, I have a friend who works for the NC2A. I don't want to get a text message from him. I don't know if he watches. I know he reads. I know he reads Buckeye Huddle. So I don't know if he watches the shows. Why were you so critical with the NC2A? I'm just sitting here doing my job in the blah, blah, blah department. But the NC2A has been bad in terms of enforcing the rules. And I think if the NC2A screws this up, then we're going to see a situation of where people are going to be clamoring for a legislative body that actually does stuff in terms of enforcement. Because hell, you have coaches like Matt Rule who don't even want to have a spring game because they're afraid of tampering that'll come out of that. And I don't think he's totally wrong about that, to be honest. If you sit there and you're like, well, we've got you dead to rights on A, B, C, D, and E. Here you go, a really big fine. We're seeing coordinators making $3.1 million a year right now. Do you think hitting somebody with a $10 million fine, and I'm just making up a number, a $10 million fine is going to sit there and hamper them, is going to be a deterrent? It's going to be annoying to them. Oh, how are we going to replace this money? Oh, we're just going to have to pass the hat again. There's no deterrence in that. There has to be something. And the problem is that, yeah, do you go backward or do you go forward? Do you punish the team moving forward for transgressions that occurred in the past? Obviously, from what was in the Yahoo report that Ross Dellinger put out, Sharon Moore deleted text messages. There had to be some level of knowledge. You could hit Sharon Moore with some sort of penalty, some sort of show cause, whatever. He's employed. A show cause really does more for keeping you from getting a job. So, Yeah, it is a major embarrassing moment of, oh my God. I mean, you're going to have to answer that forever. It's going to be on your Wikipedia page. It's going to be on everything that you had to go through it. But again, not necessarily real punishment. I mean, yeah, you could have bowl bans moving forward, and the NC2A certainly has shown in the past that it doesn't have an issue throwing that out now, but there seems to be this overarching, narrative that, well, we don't want to do bowl bans anymore. That doesn't, that's not fair. It's not fair? Stealing MFing signs with a complex, yet stupid, yet complex scheme of operatives and everything else, and stripping out hard drives and having some unpaid intern put them in a backpack and take them to a place where you will pick them up later after you knock on the door 3 times and give 3 winks or whatever. That's not fair as well. So then you have to go back. And that's when you sit there and you have to vacate games. Now, everybody, Ohio State fans want to see Michigan vacate that title. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't think so. And here's why. The world ain't fair. The world ain't fair. And the CFP is part of, the conference commissioners, the whole shoot match is part of the CFP, but the NC2A is not. I mean, this is an FCS where you get one of those wooden and gold metallic, plaquey trophies or whatever. This is different. This is a different situation. There is no Division I FBS football champion that is directly NC2A generated. So I could see a scenario of where, Michigan has to vacate like 3 seasons of games, and then it's kind of put in the CFP's hands of what they want to do there. And then I could see the CFP where, on the selection side, Ward Manuel, the Michigan athletic director, is the head of the selection side, which is not, the whole shoot match. Admiral Rich Clark is like kind of the boss, like, the big guy right now there, after replacing Bill Hancock. So again, I don't know. I really don't know. And you really can't do scholarship reductions either, as we're moving more into this realm of going to 105 and walk-ons don't exist. And long story short, no longer the man. I don't know. I don't know. If I spent as much time as I want to following it, I wouldn't get anything else done. So, we're doing our best. David Whalen, Big Me Kickoff rules. Hey, Kevin, will the Bucks try to replicate a running back duo for the upcoming season? Absolutely. They already have. They got, they have James Peoples, and then they have CJ Donaldson, the transfer. So 2 very different type of backs. Now, people will be like, well, James Peoples, he's only a true sophomore. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's somebody that if you let him be the, runner from 10 years ago, you put him in like a Beanie Wells role or whatever and said, we want you to run, or I guess maybe a little more than 10 years. We want you to run it 30 times a game. He could be a 15, 1,600-yard rusher. He is really dynamic, where Donaldson is kind of a battering ram as well. And I don't mean a battering ram like maybe Mayan Williams, who wasn't ever going to get you a huge hit, but he was always going to fall forward for a couple more yards. Donaldson, I think is a little bit more of a complete back, in my opinion. So they will have, a 1-2 there. As for who 3 will be, I don't necessarily know at this point. I mean, bringing in a couple of really talented true freshmen. You got Isaiah West, you got Bo Jackson. They're bringing in Turbo Rogers, who, is more of a Swiss Army knife type of player. But we saw last year, you really don't get a lot of carries for your third back. I mean, especially when you have 2 backs that are solid. I mean, maybe a little bit less proven with what Ohio State has in its 1-2, maybe to start the season, maybe not Texas, but, maybe once they get past Texas, they spread the love a little bit more and see what you got. See what you got. But yeah, it is. I mean, that's the future, is 2 backs. It's a long season. We saw Trevion Henderson get hurt to one degree or another every other season, and not his first season. His first season, he took the world by storm, but you get hurt. It's going to be a lot more of backs getting 9, 10, 11 carries along with the other back getting 9, 10, 11 carries, and you're going to see somebody getting 28 carries. So that's the future. Maybe it's going to be different like at a service academy or something like that. But when you're talking, your upper echelon teams that are not playing for the 13 games, they're playing for the 16 games. I know that's only a difference of 3 games, but is looking to play into late January. That's the way you got to go. Here we go. Here, do you think Michigan fans will care if the NC2A takes their title? Andy Staples thinks not. They'll care. They'll care. Now, I have not heard Andy's statement. Andy's a friend, so I want to preface by that, because when Noon's disagreeing with Staples, he must think he's an idiot. No, I really like Andy Staples. I can make the argument of they won't because they have the memories. They bought the T-shirts. They went to the games. They got the tattoos. They've dressed up like juggalos with the trophy, whatever the hell it is they do. So taking it away doesn't change anything. They took away everything that the Fab Five did and put it in a box in their archives. And, you still get people who talk about how bad they got screwed on that deal and everything else. But Michigan really tried, especially on the football side of things, to talk about how they did it cleaner and better than everybody else. And if you have a title stripped from you, that's the opposite. That's not good. So I think that there will be a concern. I mean, I do think that there is a measure of, you hate us because you ain't us, with everybody coming after them on this whole situation. And I really think there's a large number of people that don't feel that what Connor Stallions did was wrong. I mean, I can't necessarily defend those people. I'm sorry. You know my opinions on all of that and everything else that, I heard along the way on this long and winding road that is the Michigan saga. But I don't necessarily think that they're going to be like, well, that's fine. We have what we have. I think there will be a tremendous amount of pissiness about it, and and then it'll be done. I mean, maybe people will hope that the way that like Reggie Bush got his Heisman back much after the fact, that the wrongs will be righted or whatever. But again, what's wrong is associating with Connor Stallions and his whole scheme. Billy Tuesday, howdy Kevin and Buckeye folks. No longer the man. Do you think the Big Ten has overtaken the SEC? I'm not going to answer that one today, and here's why. I'm writing a piece on that. I don't know which day it's coming, but I'm writing a piece on it. We'll do a show to accompany that. So I don't want to scoop myself. I haven't fully. I mean, I know what my thoughts are, but I don't want to fully give all of my thoughts on that one. Lori, how do we get confetti? Here's how you get confetti. You sign up for BuckeyeHuddle.com. You go to subscribe now. You join now. Join on a monthly membership. Get $4.99 for your first month. And once you go into Buckeye Huddle, go to the Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse Columbus. There is a thread in the pinned threads, which are at the top of the message board, called National Championship Confetti. Get in that thread and say, I want confetti. And then, just for good measure, you will get in and find the name of Tom Orr, click on his icon, start a conversation, and send him your mailing information, and we will turn around and get it out in the mail for you. Now, we're doing them in drops, so we got our first drop out. All of those are in the hands of people that ask for them, but we cover the postage. There's no send us a self-addressed stamped envelope or any of that stuff. This isn't a transcripted nightline or anything like that. We cover the postage and we get it sent to you. And what do you get? A, you get confetti, and B, you get a month of Buckeye Huddle, the best Buckeye site, in my opinion, out there. Tom, Tony, myself covering the team, Mark Givler covering recruiting, Ross Fulton and his team of experts giving you X's and O's to be a better Buckeye fan. And, of course, the Huddle board, which is by far the most chill, awesome Ohio State community out there. went out this weekend and supported one of our members who just opened a food truck here in Columbus. Delicious smash burgers over at Grateful Griddle. The cat is running around and spazzing out, distracting me. I'm sorry, but so many opportunities over there at Buckeye Huddle. But that's the way you go about it. So if you do it, let me know, shoot me a note, or you can always email me at kevin@buckeyegrove.com. Yes, that's not Buckeye Huddle, but that was the site I used to run, and it's just a lot easier keeping that email address and not having to change everything that I'm doing. So there you go, Lori. Hopefully that is helpful there. Rick asks, Walmart confetti isn't what it used to be. Stop. I promise you, every bit of this confetti picked up by Tom, Tony, and myself. And again, we've not added to it to try and stretch it out. First of all, the ones that are the little ovals that have the 2025 with the logo, we couldn't replicate those if we wanted to. And then it's like red and like it's white. I mean, I don't know why they didn't have like a gray one. And then there's some gold streamers and there's some black streamers and things like that. Tom is in charge. Tom has taken over the confetti project. I mean, he took it from the beginning. So he's the one who puts them together, but people sent pictures. People are getting a nice amount to where we can get everybody some confetti. We're not giving you like a piece and it's like, here you go. Please, sir, may I have some more? We're, giving you enough that you can sit there and commemorate, this championship. And we've got we're working on some giveaways coming up here soon for our members and for new members, but why not get on board right now for $4.99 for our members with some bigger prizes and things of that nature. We've not hammered out any of the details yet. I can't give you a teaser or anything like that. We've been trading emails internally for a day or two about it. Some big things coming. So be sure not only to sign up for Buckeye Huddle, but stay involved with Buckeye Huddle. A lot of times people will sign up and then kind of, come in and out. Check it every day. Check it every day. I do, but I have to. That's my job. Mozart goes, what do we know about Randy Bates? Would he be a good fit for the current makeup of our defensive coaches? There are conflicting stories out there on Randy Bates right now. And I don't want to get too much of the behind the paywall stuff. We do have to keep some stuff behind the paywall. Mozart's Ghost is a member, as I said, of Buckeye Huddle. What about you? I know there's some people that are pretty insistent it's going to happen. I've also talked to some people who are pretty insistent that it's not going to happen. I think that there's certainly a belief that getting an elder statesman type of DC in there to work with the rest of the Ohio State coaching staff, maybe, I coach coaches type of situation, going back to the John Cooper years, which that comment didn't necessarily do very well in the moment. Going 2-10-1 against Michigan will do that. I think that you want to find somebody that does a lot of similar things. I mean, everybody's got their own defensive scheme. You're not going to bring in somebody where it's going to be just 100% identical. But, I think that the Ohio State coaches that were there under Knowles for 3 years kind of understand the system. I mean, how does it translate to play calling? I'm not as sure on that, but Bates likes pressure. I mean, he likes sending pressure, which I think we looked at Knowles. The first year was too much pressure. Year 2 there was not enough pressure. I think year 3, especially after the Oregon loss, was about just right. Especially at the end of the season when JT and Jack both just like went nuts and just started wrecking things. So I'm not ready to start writing my Randy Bates welcome to Ohio State story yet. I'm getting some conflicting information there. Talked to some people around Pittsburgh who, certainly are very like Bates, but when I said, hey, what do you think about, the possibility? And they're like, why are they looking at Bates? I'm like, what, are you trying to throw me off the scent? It's like, no, I just thought that they might, go get somebody that's a bigger name. So again, I don't know. A lot of this stuff we're posting over on the Huddle board. Another reason to be a member of Buckeye Huddle. How far behind are we? Oh, holy hell, we're 35 minutes behind on our questions. Do you believe Ohio State has the best offensive and defensive player in the country next season? Yes. Yes, I won't go into a long answer here as I play catch up. Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, boom, boom. That doesn't mean that there aren't other players that are going to vie for those spots, but let's say this. Ohio State has the best tandem, period. Like if you're like, who has, you gotta put their best offensive and defensive player on the block. Ohio State's number one. But I think that, I think Jeremiah Smith truly is going to be the best offensive player. And I'm hard pressed to necessarily think of somebody that I would rather have than Caleb Downs. Dylan Stewart at South Carolina had an amazing season. You can't necessarily get beyond that. But I haven't gotten into 2025 thoughts yet, so I could change my mind. But right off the jump, though, I agree they do have the best. Playoffs will be more competitive. 14 teams, only 2 buys. I think Ohio State, even if they don't win it all, should be a yearly contender. Yeah, we're not to 14 yet. Not to 14 yet. That's 26. And I has that been finalized? I don't know. There's so much stuff out there. Well, will they make changes prior to the 25 playoffs? Unlikely, because you have to have everybody agreeing to stuff. Even if the Big Ten and the SEC are the big dogs in the room, you still have to sit there and listen to what the Pomeranian in the corner says and everything else. So, I think, Ohio State was the only team in the nation from wherever they went back through 14, that if they expanded to 12 at that point, that would have made the field every single year. So Ohio State has not had a losing season since 11. That was the 6-7 year under Fickle. They went 6-6 against everybody's better judgment. Went to the Gator Bowl, lost to Florida, ended up that season 6-7. Then you have to get back to around the turn of the millennium. When Tressel first got in, was picking up a Cooper team that had just kind of lost its way after some really good teams in the late 90s. Ohio State is not a team, knock on wood, that really gives up much ground. Doesn't really give up a lot of ground at all. Lisa Sims, glad you had Mark on yesterday to talk about the open coaching spots and how it affects recruiting. It was really helpful because I was curious about that. Mark had me on. That was Mark's show. I was on his show, but same difference. I'm glad you appreciate it. If you hadn't seen it, check out Skull Session Recruiting Podcast here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps us with our distribution, gets us out to more Buckeyes fans. Hit the thumbs up and ring that bell while you're at it. Don't miss a single episode of any of our shows. Billy Tuesday, does Day name an OC or DC first? I don't know. I think it just depends on if he feels comfortable with somebody and he's ready to do it. I don't think that there's a master plan. I think there is a plan of you want to sit there and name your OC before you fill the other offensive position. Unless he's doing an internal hire or something like that, I think you do that, and then you let the OC have heavy influence on who the OL coach is going to be. Or again, you could shuffle things around or whatever. And we certainly have heard a lot of the names out there. Obviously there's the talk about the internal hire, Brian Hartline. No, Brian Hartline is a killer recruiter. He is a killer developer. Is he necessarily ready to be your offensive play caller? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. The year that he was supposed to be heavily involved in the play calling, he wasn't calling the plays. Ryan wasn't ready to release the reins, so we don't necessarily have anything to build that off of. So, I don't know. And people are like, well, if you don't do this, he's going to leave like Tuesday. No, he has a really good setup here in Columbus. Everybody's got aspirations and goals and everything else. And I'm not going to sit there and say that somebody's necessarily like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good where I'm at. I think everybody wants to advance, but Brian Hartline has not been coaching for 20 years or anything like that. He still has a lot more, probably by his own admission. And he's somebody who, Brian Hartline likes him some Brian Hartline. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be confident in yourself. But he probably recognizes that he still has a lot of learning to do to get to the next level and get to the level beyond that and everything else. Tommy Rees is a name that people keep throwing out there. He was either the OC or the co-OC with the Browns, which isn't necessarily the greatest endorsement. He was an OC at Alabama under Nick Saban, but part of the issue there too was they didn't really have a throwing quarterback with Jalen Milroe. A little search that I did on Rees and what some of his things are: pre-snap motion, misdirection, and a lot of things on the run game. So that would be a good fit with Day's passing concepts. But I don't know. Neil Brown, the former West Virginia head coach, has been mentioned by some people. I'm not getting a lot of feedback on that one being real, but I don't know. Joe Moorhead at Akron was mentioned by some people, myself included, last year before the hiring of Bill O'Brien, which then led to the hiring of Chip Kelly. Jason Candle, the OC the head coach at Toledo. Maybe he's had a lot of success at Toledo, but the head coaching offers have not necessarily been super impressive for him to move on. Maybe a change of scenery changes some things up there. I'm sure there are other names that I'm missing right now. And then, on the defensive side, I think it's really, all of these hires are super important, but I think by far the most important one is your DC. You could make the argument of the OC. If Ryan doesn't feel good about the OC, does he go back to calling plays? And do we get to a point of where, coaches will sometimes get themselves locked in, into this vapor lock of, well, this is what I do in this situation, and everybody in the world knows it, and it doesn't work. So there is a lot to the OC, but I think with Ryan Day being an offensive-minded coach, and if he wants to have a head coach of the defense, you got to get the DC hire right. I mean, you can sit there and have all the faith in the world in your assistant coaches, but they're not the ones who are making the play calls. It's your coordinator. So I think he has to nail the DC hire. Big Chevy, greetings from rural Missouri. Hope you're having a good day. Always nice to see you hosting a live. Thank you. I couldn't tell you the last time I did a taped. I know that I said pre-bowl games, I'm going to do 3 a week. I wouldn't necessarily hit that number. And I was like 2 taped and a live. It's only Tuesday. This is my first one this week. I think I've been trying to do 2 lives because would that make you guys my 2 live crew? But I don't know. But yeah, I think that the live shows are important. One of my biggest fears is we spend all year getting everybody to join us, and then if we get into quote unquote the off season, which there really isn't truly a true off season, and we don't do enough lives, does everybody get on with their lives, and then we have to find you again, and it's not till October that we have everybody back. So while I'm not going to necessarily promise numbers, I am going to promise that I am going to, during the off season, try and make a huge commitment to doing live shows to keep the community together, to keep everybody around. I think that's important. Let me just keep scrolling. If I skip some questions, it's just a matter of I'm so far behind, and I want to try and get some questions from other people who ask it. So don't necessarily feel like I'm avoiding a question. I'm producing the show myself. These aren't exactly Coke bottle glasses, but I don't see so well anymore. So I'm sitting here, I have to lean in to read it. So I don't see every question, ones that maybe I would normally run. David Greenshield, how much would Kevin Wilson help the transition of Heartline to OC? Seems like it would help. Yeah, I mean, it certainly would help. I mean, and you could sit there and Wilson could be your O-line coach. And I mean, I think that is, if that is the play, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think coming off of a national championship season is the time to be breaking in a lot of new personnel. You've got a gigantic target on your back, which is fine. That's a better target than the hot seat target that Ohio State, that Ryan Day has had on his back for 2 years. But I don't know, because I don't want to sit there and say something to where people are reading between the lines and being like, well, Kevin really isn't in favor of Heartline getting the job. No, that's not it. But I just think that you're going from Chip Kelly, somebody who is just, an offensive maniac, to somebody who hasn't necessarily called plays, and then having to adjust pieces and everything else, you got a good thing going right now with Hartline doing and developing guys the way that he is. And then, I know the default position for a lot of Buckeye fans are, if somebody is a former Buckeye football player, we want them as a coach. And I also learned that arguing the point with people is not beneficial to me. But I will say one more time that I think right now, and I'm not insinuating that David Greenshield is died, like completely into this. It's like, no, I only want former Buckeye players as coaches. I think you need to go out and get what fits the team best. And I understand all of the concerns about, well, you could lose this and you could lose that. Well, they won the national championship and they lost 3 coaches. You can't stop coach movement. And it's like, okay, well, all right, you could go through 25 with, not necessarily upsetting the apple cart and bring in an OC from outside. And then what happens if Hartline gets offered XYZ job elsewhere? Then you have to make a decision at that point. What are you going to do? But it's in the best interest of some coaches as well, too, to keep their stock high by, maybe staying in a position until it's time to really elevate. I could see Brian Hartline more easily making the transition of going from wide receiver coach to head coach than going to being an OC. I certainly could see that. And then we don't necessarily have to worry about that step. Give him a raise, give him a title, another title. He's got some great titles as it is. I think you need to have people that have called offenses and defenses. But Kevin, people are talking about Tim Walton. People are talking about Matty G. They've called defenses. Now, they don't necessarily have a long history of doing it, but at least, they've structurally gone through it. So, I don't know. I'm trying to dance around the issue because I don't necessarily want to get misinterpreted with what my thoughts are. But I just think it's important for Ohio State to go and swing for the fences right now. Market X, what's everybody having for dinner? I have some leftover Mexican food, which won't be enough. It'll probably be like as soon as I'm done with the show, I'll eat that. It's like my 4:30. I didn't have lunch. As my late lunch. And then around 8, I might have a sandwich or something like that. So nothing that exciting. Mozart's Ghost is having a Wendy's burger and chili. Billy Tuesday, Hot Pocket and Kool-Aid. Lisa Sims about picking up Jason Gwynn. I think he's very intriguing. I think it's very explosive, but he's a preferred walk-on. That doesn't mean that, there are still the Craig Fadas and Joe Burgers of the world and Antonio Smith was a walk-on who, I'm dating myself at that point. And, there have been other, walk-ons that have had huge roles to be able to do things. But at this point, I'm not necessarily evaluating Gwynn because I'm not going to evaluate him until I have to evaluate him. I mean, I guess is the best way I can put that. Let's just keep scrolling here again. We are so far. Market X says, feed that cat, you monster. No. She has food. She weighs like a pound because she was a runt and she's old. She's never not had food down. It is always a case of she's got 3 different food dishes. There's always food in at least 2 of them. She's just pissed that I'm not sitting on the sofa. Again, she's like almost 18 and she just wants to sleep on me on the sofa while I work. So that's what that is. Or as those of you who are cat owners know, sometimes they get really vocal when they're about to make a mess. So that's really what I'm fearing, that I'm going to have to clean up a mess after the show's done. Steve is asking, is Larry Johnson retiring? Not to my knowledge at this point. He signed a multi-year deal. He used to operate on 1s. Now, I think his last deal was a 3. I think, 2 years into the 3? he will get to a point where, I mean, it's going to happen at some point, but I've not heard anything at this moment. I've been on the air for the last hour, 54 minutes, 55 minutes. So I haven't talked to anybody in the last hour, but that's not my belief. I mean, and I think the thing too is that if he was going to retire, you'd hope that it would be communicated sooner so you don't let an assistant like Alan Clark walk out the door. And I'm not saying Clark is necessarily was going to be the heir apparent at Ohio State at D-line, but I think that, there has to be a level of loyalty, and I'm not saying anybody's broken this loyalty. I'm speaking in generalities at this moment. If you're thinking about retiring, you've got to make sure that you express that upwards just so nobody's caught flat-footed. Let's just keep going. Again, if I miss anything, I will apologize at that point. Got a super chat from Doug Shepard. Connor didn't pay for the scheme himself. No. Again, it's systemic. It's not they try to play lone wolf. Well, the 137-page report or whatever said not lone wolf. So, I mean, obviously, once again, they are completely FOS on that. And yeah, Chadwick Morin got his confetti yesterday. So good to see that the USPS, for all of its troubles, is actually getting these things out here to people. Steve, would Eddie George be an analyst or coach for the Buckeyes? He's a head coach right now. Why would he be an analyst for the Buckeyes? That's a huge backward step. I mean, and he's at Tennessee State and HBCU. He's really happy trying to turn things around there. I've not followed Tennessee State through the last several years. I've sometimes when you're trying to get 10 pounds of bleep into a 5-pound bag, you can't entertain the 11th pound. So I've not really followed that, but why? I mean, are you not happy with Carlos Loughlin? I mean, why? I mean, I'm not saying that Eddie couldn't do things other than be a running backs coach, but why? I'm just going to get back to Eddie. He probably barely remembers me from back in the day, but I mean, it's there's a reason why every staff is not made up of just, and it's the Ohio State alumni staff and it's the Alabama alumni staff. And there are going to be guys that work out well as a coach, and there are going to be guys that don't work out well as a coach. And Eddie obviously has gotten to the point of his career where he's a head coach, but I don't know why. See, guys have dragged me back into this again. I don't think you need to have more than just a couple of ex-players on your staff. If you're a program that was good enough to generate players of that level, you got Laurinaitis, you got Hartline, you got Walt. I mean, I think, you're doing pretty darn well right there with that. You've got guys that understand what it, they understand what it means to be a Buckeye. Yes, absolutely. They played on that field, not on that surface, but they played on that field. They know, they know what it was like to sit there in here, Carmen, Ohio, as a student athlete. They know what all of that is all about. But the admission to the I'm a good coach club just doesn't start and end with being an alum of the school you're coaching at. So I'm not a proponent of just doing that. Well, they need to get LaCharles Bentley. They need to get Orlando Pace. They need to get Antoine Winfield. I mean, where does it end? Where does it end at that point? Where does it end? But I digress. I mean, again, I'm not mad. It's just something that I answer on a lot of shows, and it's difficult because it puts me in a bad position because it makes me look like I, am so vehemently against something. And maybe I am to a certain extent, because I think that the best thing is you have to have coaches that all work well together, that work well under the head coach, that are able to implement his wishes. And You can't necessarily bring somebody in and be like, all right, well, we're going to force you to change all of your philosophies to be in tune with our head coach or whatever. That's just not always going to work. And they're just going to be some guys that just are better, maybe an individual trainer working with an individual than doing scheme work and things like that. So I don't know. We are 1 hour in exactly here on the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It is Tuesday, February 4th. We are now at the 4 p.m. hour. Almost dinner time for me, or late lunch, early dinner. Be sure to subscribe to Buckeye Huddle, $4.99 for your first month. Get that confetti before we're out of it. Get that $4.99 deal before we're done with it. If you're watching us on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, hit the thumbs up. The thumbs up is really important, as well as subscribing. Helps us get out to more Buckeye fans. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, leave us a 5-star review. It helps us there as well. Back to the questions. We're going to go 15, 20 more minutes. We'll see. I know I'm getting caught up. Bootzilla says no to Tommy Rees, as does Doug Shepard Sr. Again, just a name I'd heard in the circles. I kind of laughed when he went from Notre Dame to Alabama at that point. I watched a lot of Browns this year. They're not my team, but as those of you who follow all of my product know that I do a post-game show for Spectrum News 1, Browns post-game show, and that necessitates me watching every game that I work. So I probably saw at least 13 games this year. And, I don't think it's his fault that the front office is so stupid at the quarterback position and some of the other decisions that were made. But I get it. I get it for the people who are not necessarily super in line with that move. The Browns are contaminated. I hear you there. Market X says Tommy Rees coaching drove Saban into retirement. Kenneth says bring in a similar DC willing to run a similar operation and an OC. It was overseen by Day. Simple. On paper, yeah, it's simple. Now go out and find it. Now Ohio State was paying between its two coordinators $4.1 million. I bet you, based on Knowles kind of setting the market at $3.1 million as a DC. Now there's a coach at LSU that was making 2.5 this season. I think 2.5 is going to kind of be the magic number if you bring in somebody who is making in the high ones or whatever. Going back to Randy Bates, he was making like $980. You don't pay Randy Bates $2.5 million if he was making $980. In my opinion, I just don't think that hire would necessitate that much compensation. Salaries are getting big, but Ryan Day is reworking his deal, and I'm sure that the money for his assistant coaching pool goes up with all of that. So it's very important. We know how important assistants are. Keep scrolling. A lot of people that are very, very against the Tommy Rees comment. Xavier Johnson was a great walk-on. Yeah, that was the name I was spacing on. I tried my best not to show that I was spacing on one name. I think walk-ons are important, but I also think that I didn't follow Xavier Johnson until I had to follow Xavier Johnson. And God's honest truth, I've not really started watching any 2026 kids either. I know a couple ones that Mark and I've done shows on, but there will be days that I just, all right, I'm going to work 10 hours to get today, and I'm like 7 hours. I'm going to just watch Huddle tape of kids and jot down some notes, because you can't throw comments out on the fly when Mika Hanna asks you, what do you think about this kid? And you've not seen him. I mean, I could be honest, which I've always had. Well, I haven't seen him. I need to watch his tape, and then I add him to a list. But, I'd like to be able to throw some things out there when that was out there. Let's just keep going down here. John Dowd says Larry's the Customato or the Mr. Miyagi of the defensive line. Cut me cuss. Yeah, he's kind of an ageless one. The funny thing is that Pat Morita was a lot younger as Mr. Miyagi in the original Karate Kid than people knew. I mean, he was a lot younger, so that was, kind of crazy. But Larry is an ageless one. It's pretty crazy with all of that. So, we'll see. We'll see. Steve says, I didn't say running back coach. I mean, but what are you going to bring him in as? I mean, again, why? We'll circle back on this one. He's a head coach right now. Yes, it's Tennessee State. It's not like he's the head coach of Tennessee or whatever. But obviously, he felt it was very important, to take the Tennessee State job, and that's fine, and that's good. And I'm not going to sit there and say anything about it. I mean, I think that I think we're starting to see more and more football knowledge, more football, energies put into HBCU football, and I'm here for it. I think it's great. So he wouldn't come in as an analyst. So then, I mean, yeah, we've seen people leave head coaching jobs to come in and take a coordinator role or whatever. I mean, what has Eddie shown you to be a great offensive coordinator other than he was a great Ohio State running back? I don't know where the translation is. I think that, at that point, the only line on his resume that people are looking at is won a Heisman Trophy at Ohio State. Okay. But, I don't know why that suddenly makes him, especially when you have the 10 coaching positions, why you sit there and you put him on one of those counting positions. Could he recruit? Probably. But remember this, every kid that he'd be out there recruiting would have no idea who he was as a player unless they were from Ohio and they heard their parents talking about it. They wouldn't know. None of them were born. Yet. It's more of a nostalgia play for the parents than it is for the kids. So again, I don't see it. I don't see it. And I just have to be honest. I have to be honest and say my thoughts on it because, there have been times in my career where I've just been like, all right, it's just not worth the blowback. I'm just not going to say anything. And then people are like, well, you're naturally on board with this. I'm like hell I am. I don't like that idea one whatsoever. Coaching matters. And I think that you have to put together the best search regardless of where they're from, where they played football and everything else. I think that coaching talent and developing talent is going to win you something more than where that coach played his own football. Let me just keep scrolling right here. Yes, Doug Shepard, I agree. Hit the like button. I'm gonna stop down for a couple of seconds and give everybody a chance to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Here in 3, 2, 1. All right. I appreciate everybody who has. Again, that helps us with our distribution as we are closing in on our final 5-10 minutes of the show, unless super chats will keep me here a little bit longer. All right. A lot of conversation between y'all here, so I may be picking things there. Chris Spielman as defensive coordinator. I know I'm going overboard. David Greenshield also put some other names in there. Chris Spielman as a coach has not worked out, period. Doesn't mean that he's any less of a Buckeye great. Doesn't mean he's any less of a great dude. Just hasn't worked. You could be a great actor and a terrible director. I mean, it's, it is what it is. I mean, the two things are not necessarily linked. You could be more physically blessed than any other kid out in the field when you're out there playing and just out athlete the hell out of everybody. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to translate that you're going to be able, and I see your comment, Steve, I'm going to get in a second, that you're going to be able to instill that upon somebody, that you're going to be able to call a great plan or whatever. As a player, that's first person shooter. As a coach, that's third person shooter, and they're two very different things right there. I don't know if I necessarily want to use the term shooter in this effed up society we live in, but those of you who have ever played video games know what the hell I'm talking about. Steve says it's cool. We can disagree. Absolutely. We've done something that most people can't do out there in society, and that is disagree and come away as friends. So that's the big thing. And that's something that I definitely try to do over on the Huddle message board as well. I may not agree with every take I read there, but I'm going to respect the person that I'm talking to. And while I don't necessarily agree with the take, I'll say, I'll say my things. If you guys don't stop naming former players as coaches, I'm going to turn this car around. I saw something here. Yeah, Robert Howard saying Mika is a recruiting service database. Yeah, she is very amazing with all of that. I can't tell you. I know you're joking, David Greenshield. I can't tell you the number of times that she's named a player that I'm like, I don't know who the hell she's talking about. So I'm quietly typing the kid into a database so I can sit there and act like I know who she's talking about. Generally by the end of a cycle, I know who everybody is, but crazy thought right here. National Signing Day is tomorrow. Do not expect any action from Ohio State side. Their class is done. They certainly were trying to maybe get back into the Zahir Mathis sweepstakes. That didn't really happen. So there's no Ohio State presser tomorrow for recruiting or anything like that. I am going to write a commentary about the recruiting calendar. That is something that will be coming out tomorrow over at Buckeye Huddle. So be sure to look for that. That is what is on my docket for tomorrow. Again, I wrote a piece today looking at the Hot 11. The Hot 11 is the top 11 players on the team. We didn't do one every week. I didn't get one preseason. I don't think I got one after the first game. We didn't do one after the team up north. So, yeah, I think I missed 3 or 4 weeks, but like 13 data points, 14 data points, something like that. Went through all of them. It was a real interesting study on my side, so be sure to check that out. I know Tony is turning out a lot of good content. Tony and Tom are putting out a lot of podcasts as well. Mark Gibler right now is doing an all-day chat over on the Huddle message board. Sign up now, $4.99. Get involved there. Ask him any question about recruiting, what have you. We do shows all the time, but the best way to get to us is on the message board, the Huddle Best message board, presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse Columbus. But I think we're done. I need to go see if the cat left a mess or not and put some clothes in the dryer and everything else and go reheat my grilled steak burrito from a local place here. But had a good time talking with y'all. Always do. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Until the next time, we'll go live again this week. We will. I hope everybody has a great day. Talk to you soon and stay safe.